Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 90. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we have an Inner Focus team. Now Inner Focus was an ability that was buffed last generation in order to ignore Intimidate, but otherwise, I guess it would help if I hovered over Inner Focus, but Inner Focus normally makes it so that the target cannot flinch. And this is a really good ability for doubles because both Intimidate's pretty popular in doubles in order to inhibit physical attackers, but also using the move Fake Out in order to flinch your opponent and buy yourself some more turns is obviously a very good strategy in doubles. So starting off with our first Inner Focus mon, we have Dragonite, who is probably the most notable Inner Focus Pokemon, and we're going to be taking advantage of the fact that Dragonite cannot be intimidated by slapping a Choice Band onto Dragonite and going with the Terra Normal Extreme Speed set, which allows us to deal a lot of priority damage very quickly into things that aren't Steel or Ghost types, or for the things that are Steel or Ghost types, we also have the follow-up Outrage in order to do massive stab dragon type damage. We also have the Ice Spinner in order to perhaps get rid of the opponent's terrains, but also deal ice type damage. And we have the Rock Slide just in case we need to do some spread damage with Dragonite, we can afford to do so. Next up, we have Mudsdale, who is another Inner Focus Pokemon, and Mudsdale is mostly just going to be used here for its semi-tankiness, where we have the Sulfist in order to give us special tank, and we have tools on this team to give us physical tank, but we also have a bit of physical investment as well. And we're just going to be using 4 of the different coverage moves and the high horsepower for our ground stab, the lash out for a bit of dark coverage, but also it gets doubled if we had a stat lowered. It is kind of difficult to lower a stat on Mudsdale though, as it pretty much has to be speed since we're Inner Focus, so we're not getting intimidated. But we also have the body press on the Mudsdale to make use of our defense stat, but also to give us fighting coverage. And we have the Terra Grass, Terra Blast in order to hit things like water types or rock types. Next up, we have Sneasel, and the benefit of running Sneasel over running Sneasler is that Sneasel has Inner Focus, while Sneasler does not. If we go ahead and check Sneasler's abilities, Sneasler has Pressure, Unburden, Poison Touch, and Sneasel has Inner Focus, Keen Eye, and Pickpocket, which are all entirely different abilities, so you can catch your opponents off guard with an Inner Focus mon if you go with the Sneasel. And with the Sneasel, we get access to the EVLA, but we're not a very tanky Pokemon initially, so the EVLA is doing some work, but it's not doing as much work as it could with other EVLA Pokemon, but we're at least a little bit tankier. And we have 2 good stabs in the Poison Jab and the Close Combat, just to try and maybe deal some chip damage into the opponent pretty much. But we also have access to the Coaching, which is the main thing that you would want here in order to increase the attack of our physical attackers, being Dragonite and Mudsdale, and give everybody defense boost, which everybody really likes. Up next we have Umbreon, who is going to be our last Inner Focus Pokemon on the team, and Umbreon is a decent support Pokemon because it is very, very tanky. As a matter of fact, we don't have any investment in Umbreon's attack stats whatsoever because we are going to be using Foul Play, which is a 95 base power move that uses the target's attack stats, so hopefully we can hit the opponent for a lot of damage. But we also have the Yawn in order to perhaps stall the opponent to try and put them to sleep, and we have the Taunt to keep them from using status moves. And with the Protect on the Umbreon, it also makes it more guaranteed that we can get off the Yawn sleep, because we can Yawn and then we can Protect to force the opponent to fall asleep, and then we can go for the safety goggles so that we are not getting put to sleep by things ourselves, but we're also ignoring the Rage Powder redirection. And we're Terra Water on Umbreon just because water is a really good defensive type. Up next we have Rabombi, and Rabombi is not an Inner Focus Pokemon, but it does something kind of similar in the fact that we have the Shields dust, so we don't care about Intimidate drops, but we are not going to be flinched by any move at all in the game because it is a secondary effect of most moves, and with Shield Dust we are ignoring all secondary effects of moves, so we're also ignoring like Icy when speed drops or Snarl special attack drops.
But with our Bombi here, we are Focus Sash so that we can always take at least one hit, and we are a bit of a setup set here as we have the Quiver Dance in order to increase our special attack, special defense, and speed, as well as we have Moonblast for just our good fairy damage, and Pollen Puff to perhaps side heal our Pokemon. But Pollen Puff is also just a good bug damage dealing move since it is 90 base power, and we have the Draining Kiss, which is a weaker fairy move than Moonblast. However, it allows us to restore a lot of our HP, so if we're going up against special attackers where we've gotten off a Quiver Dance or two, and then we're Draining Kissing into them, it will be very difficult for these special attackers to try and remove Ribombee before Ribombee removes them. And we're Terra Ghost on the Ribombee just so that we can mostly dodge fighting in normal type attacks, but there might be a better defensive Terra to have on Ribombee, it's just that we're going with Ghost for now. And last but not least, we have Sinistcha, who is going to be supporting the rest of the Pokemon on the team with the Manchigacha Grass attack, which will heal up Sinistcha, as Sinistcha hopefully wants to heal up everybody else with things like the Life Dew and the Hospitality. But we also have the Rage Powder redirection for single attacks, and if we're redirecting physical attacks that make contact, then they're going to get damaged by the Rocky Helmet, perhaps helping us out with some Pokemon that are Focus Sash. But we also have the option to go for the Trick Room, since a few number of our Pokemon are on the slower side, or at least not extremely speedy. We can go for the Trick Room in order to make it so that they are extremely speedy. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up we have a battle against an Annihilate Excalibur team that none of these Pokemon necessarily synergize. It's just that the Rotom and the Gastrodon can block a lot of what is good into Volcarona and Annihilate. So the battle starts and we lead Sneasel and Ribombee here to perhaps try and get Ribombee set up, and they do lead both of the Pokemon that we're not great against, but we Quiver Dance, and hopefully that the Rotom doesn't just overheat into us and then the Gastrodon clicks Muddy Water. I didn't think that was very likely since I thought they would at least do something into Sneasel, and they do in fact Will-O-Wisp into Sneasel, which is good for us because it allows us to slow that down. But they do Yawn into Ribombee, which they don't have a great way of removing Ribombee right now with our special defense boost. They also reveal that they have Hex on the Rotom, so it's maybe not quite as likely that they have Overheat for Ribombee, and Ribombee's not being affected by the Icy Wind speed drops because of its Shield Dust, but now we've been put to sleep, now that we've done some damage at least, and the opponent kind of has to switch. They do go for the Hex, but we wake up on the next turn and we get the Draining Kiss into the Gastrodon in order to get a pretty good amount of our health back, and Rotom also has Shadow Ball on top of it having the Hex, so we are chipping it away with the close combat. It's just that we kind of want Sneasel to go down so that we can bring in Dragonite here to start clicking extreme speed into things, but we're just Draining Kissing in order to keep our health up, and they are Shadow Balling into Ribombee, and we're close combating into the Rotom, but the Icy Wind from Gastrodon is finally able to take out Sneasel so that we can bring in Dragonite here. We can get the extreme speed into the Rotom as we Draining Kiss the Gastrodon for a bunch of its health, and Icy Wind is super effective, but it's not stab, and it's a fairly weak move, so Dragonite takes it pretty okay, and we've locked ourselves into extreme speed, so we don't care about the speed drops at this point, and the Terra Normal extreme speed is full on just able to KO Volcarona, as Draining Kiss is able to take down the Gastrodon, and in the back they just have Excalibur, who does go Terra Water, but we get whatever extreme speed damage that we can, followed up by a Moonblast damage, which they are able to Icicle Spear take out Ribombee, but because we still have Sinistcha, we can afford to heal up Dragonite, and they're just stalling with their Protect here, which doesn't make a lot of sense because we could just click Trick Room with Sinistcha and then the game is extra over, but the game is still always over because we click Extreme Speed into the Excalibur. Here we have what looks to be a Mouse-Ape team, but they also have Hisuian Braviary, which I'm not quite sure why it's here. Maybe they just wanted a Tinted Lens Pokemon, because they don't have anything that looks like it could too reliably set up Psychic Terrain, except for maybe Klefki. I don't know if it gets Psychic Terrain. But the battle starts out and they lead Braviary and Mousehold, and I led thinking that they were going to lead Mousehold and Annihilate, so they protect Braviary, which is great because we really didn't want to attack into Braviary. We just wanted to try and take the Mousehold, so that way even if it was going to attack into Mouse-Ape, we could take it out before it gets the Rage Fist stacks, and we double into Braviary on this turn, but it maybe would have been better if I went for the Terra Normal on Dragonite there in order to better guarantee taking out the Braviary. But Amoonguss is just Rage Powder redirecting for
the Braviary as Hurricane comes out into Rabombi, but Rabombi gets brought down to its Focus Sash, and Amogus is still just redirecting for Braviary, gets a special attack drop there in case it went for a Palm Puff, I guess, and Dragonite takes the Hurricane there, and finally gets to click the Extreme Speed into Braviary, as Extreme Speed is faster than the Rage Powder here because Amogus is slower than Dragonite. And we just Extreme Speed in order to take out Amogus, and Amogus is Rocky Helmet, and we get super effective Fairy type damage into Annihilape. And at this point, even if Annihilape was like Fire Terra, it's probably over because we can bring in Sinistcha to heal up Rabombi, and Annihilape doesn't have anything that it can afford to Drain Punch currently on the field, and it does in fact click the Rage Fist into Sinistcha, but Sinistcha is Rocky Helmet, so it gets to take Annihilape with it. Here we have a team with a pretty good spread of Mons. They do have an opposing Sneasel, which is really my only reason for including this battle, but we do use some Pokemon here that we didn't use before, I believe. And the opponent decides to start with Frostmoth and Sneasel, and we start with Rabombi and Sneasel, so we're actually kind of mirroring each other right now, where they have a Sneasel, and I have a Sneasel, and I have a fast bug, and they have a kind of fast bug, like a tanky bug, actually. But Sneasel goes for the Fake Out, and it doesn't matter which slot it Fake Outs here. I mean, if it fakes out Rabombi, it means that Rabombi loses the Focus Sash unless we get off the Draining Kiss into Sneasel. But they crit the Fake Out on Sneasel, but Sneasel is Inner Focus, and we get off the Quiver Dance with Rabombi, and we get the Close Combat into the Sneasel here, which brings it down to the 1 HP. And Frostmoth decides to set up its own Snow, and I just keep Quiver Dancing with Rabombi, seeing as I'm not being too threatened. They do knock off our Eviolite on Sneasel, but we get to Poison Jab their Sneasel back, so my Sneasel wins the Sneasel War, as their Frostmoth goes for the Tailwind, but with the speed that we have on Rabombi, neither of these Pokemon can outspeed it, so we just get good Moonblast damage into Cryogonal, as Cryogonal gets Blizzard damage into us, and they try to go for the Icy Wind into Rabombi, but Rabombi is Shield's Dust, so it does not get speed dropped. And we use Sinistcha in order to Hospitality up Rillaboom, seeing as that they have all Ice types at this point. There's not really a reason to have Sinistcha around, as Sinistcha is a Grass type, but their last Pokemon is revealed to be the Magmar, who we can just keep Draining Kissing the Frostmoth in order to keep getting our health back pretty consistently, and they are just going to take out Sinistcha here, but now their Snow has ended, so their Ice Scales has deactivated, and we can bring in Dragonite to go for the Terra Normal so that it does not fear the Frostmoth's Ice type moves, and we get 2 damages into Magmar, who is actually faster than Dragonite, so it does get to redirect the Extreme Speed, but Icy Wind is not doing very much damage, or as much damage as it needs to, and they decide to protect Magmar for whatever reason, so we just get to double into Frostmoth and take out Frostmoth. At this point, the opponent understands that the game is just over.
Here we have what looks to be a bit of a sand team, as they have 4 Pokemon that cannot be affected by the sand, and Dragonite and Cineroar are just good Pokemon in general. So this battle starts out with Garchomp and Tyranitar hitting the field, and we start with Rabombi and Mudsdale, and they immediately decide to Terra Flying here as we Moonblast into Garchomp, and they miss the Rock Slide on Rabombi, and Mudsdale doesn't take very much damage, and they reveal Blizzard on the Tyranitar, which is a bit of a crazy play because Tyranitar is more of a physical attacker, but they're also setting up sand, so the Blizzard is not guaranteed accuracy. But they miss the Blizzard on Rabombi, which means that they activate their Blunder Policy, which is an item that I don't think we'll get to use during the 128 Teams Challenge, just because there's a very circumstantial item, but because of this 2 times speed, it actually means that they start outspeeding some of our other Pokemon, and since they went Terra Flying, they are resistant to Mudsdale's Body Press now, but they're also taking their own Sand Chip, and they miss the Blizzard on Rabombi, which is kind of nice, as we Draining Kiss into Garchomp here, and we get some Lash Out damage into Tyranitar, as Mudsdale's still not taking sand damage, and in comes Tinkaton with the Mold Breaker, and it clicks Fake Out, and it does actually get to flinch Mudsdale here because of its Mold Breaker. It's how Mold Breaker works. It gets to actually ignore abilities when dealing damage, and they Rock Slide, and they hit both of our Pokemon here with Rabombi and Mudsdale, and we Pollen Puff up Mudsdale because I wanted Mudsdale to live the turn so I could use a move into the Tinkaton, and they go for the Rock Slide again, which Rabombi faints from, and Mudsdale resists, but they miss the Ice Hammer into Mudsdale, which I don't know how much damage it would have done into Mudsdale. If I had to guess, since it's not a stab attack, and we have a good amount of physical bulk on Mudsdale, it would not have taken out Mudsdale, but the high horsepower in return is able to KO Tinkaton, so the opponent is missing quite a bit of attacks, but at this point I don't think the attack misses really matter because we still have an entire Dragonite, and I forget what the last Pokemon was. I think it was Sneasler. But now Dragonite is absolutely free to just click Extreme Speed into Tyranitar since it is no longer a Rock type, and Mudsdale can stick around in order to just click High Horsepower into Incineroar and take out Incineroar. So the opponent did miss a lot of attacks, and they also did some complaining about missing the attacks, but I mean, the first misses were necessary for their Tyranitar in order to outspeed my Pokemon, the most notable one being Rabombi, and the misses that they did miss didn't end up mattering that much because we just bring in Dragonite and then we click Extreme Speed into their Pokemon. And as long as Mudsdale was able to take Tinkaton, which we were able to heal up Mudsdale pretty effectively, like we were still good, and we still had a Pokemon in the back who could probably deal with Tinkaton even if Mudsdale wasn't able to directly deal with Tinkaton. So here we have a battle against a team that has a pretty good spread of Mons here. It looks to be mostly Gen 4, except for the fact that they have an Amoonguss and a Hisuian Arcanine. The game starts out and they immediately lead Weavile and Amoonguss here as we lead Sneasel and our Mudsdale as their Weavile is pressure, so it's not pickpocket. And they try faking out into Mudsdale, but fake out won't work against either of our Pokemon. They do manage to put Mudsdale to sleep, which is a little unfortunate, but with the defense boost on Mudsdale, I felt pretty confident that Mudsdale would be able to take an attack here. And Mudsdale gets the immediate wake up and just clicks Body Press into Gastrodon, and seeing as though they were willing to go for the Spore into Mudsdale, on the next turn, I decided to Terra Grass Mudsdale so that we can go for the Terra Grass Terra Blast at +2. But the Gastrodon actually has Clear Smog, which is a little annoying. I mean, the Terra Blast still is able to pick off Gastrodon. It's just now they could bring in at least afford to bring in Weavile. And Arcanine gets down its Intimidate, but it doesn't intimidate either of our Pokemon. And I wanted to try and get Umbreon into a position where it could start foul playing the Arcanine, so we gave it a defense boost so that it takes less damage from the Arcanine. And Amoonguss does end up sporing into Sneasel here, putting Sneasel to sleep. And Arcanine does have Stone Edge in order to try and land a crit on Umbreon, but Umbreon is still in a pretty okay spot. Pollen Puff is doing some damage to it because it is super effective, but we can swap in Sinistcha in order to heal back up Umbreon and just protect in order to draw both attacks. And Amoonguss might have predicted the Sneasel in order to wake up that turn, but we can just keep swapping out as we don't want our Sinistcha to take the damage, and we click Foul Play into Arcanine, get some damage into that, and we cycle back into Sinistcha in order to keep Umbreon healthy. And Arcanine reveals that it has Rest, but not only is it Rest, it's Chesto Resto Arcanine, which seems to be a bit of a weird set. Amoonguss still trying to Spore into the Sneasel, but not getting it. The opponent hard swaps in Weavile here, and they do Flare Blitz Sinistcha, but Sinistcha takes it pretty okay, and with the Rocky Helmet and recoil damage there, our Foul Play is able to take out Arcanine, and we just Life Deal with Sinistcha in order to put Umbreon back to full health, as Weavile reveals its Terra Stellar in order to take out Sinistcha, which I thought it might have knockoff, so we could have gotten some Rocky Helmet damage there if it was a Sash, but Umbreon gets off the Yawn here, which is pretty essential, and Sneasel does wake up on the third turn of its sleep as we double protect in order to cause Weavile to fall to sleep as Amoonguss tries to Spore into the Sneasel, but now with Weavile asleep we can either just start chipping away at Amoonguss or start foul playing at the Weavile in order to perhaps take it out. We do Close Combat, and Close Combat is going to take out Weavile, and we just Yawn into Amoonguss so that it is harder for it to just take down Umbreon, as Amoonguss does go for the Pollen Puff into Umbreon just to try and deal some damage into it, since we really don't have healing at this point, but Sneasel is able to coaching into Mudsdale, and with the Assault Vest on Mudsdale and the fact that Pollen Puff is not stab, I felt pretty good if Amoonguss woke up, but the High Horsepower with the +2 is able to flat out just KO Amoonguss from Mudsdale there. So yeah, that was the Inner Focus or Bust team, and it is a little difficult to try and build a team out of only Inner Focus Pokemon, since a good number of Inner Focus Pokemon are overlapping in typing, most notably the Fighting typing gets used a lot for Inner Focus Mons. And it is a good check to intimidate Pokemon and fake out Pokemon, but it does leave you defensively lacking whenever you're using Inner Focus Pokemon, so if your Inner Focus Pokemon aren't exerting enough pressure, you're probably just going to get KO'd. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.